and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that was the very first to speak out against New Coke. Ladies and gentlemen, today it is that time. We're going to look back at 2015, and I'm going to tell you what my top 10 games of the year were. Now, first of all, I got to tell you, I have not played nearly all of the games from 2015. There were a lot of games that I really wanted to play, I just never got a chance to. But of the games I have played, which is not an inconsiderable list, I'm going to tell you what my top 10 favorite games from this year are. First of all, I wanted to go ahead and give a few honorable mentions here to a few games that I really enjoyed but didn't quite make the cut for one reason or another. First of all, Magic the Gathering, Arena of the Planeswalkers from Hasbro was a very fun skirmish game with magic I liked. Game of Thrones Risk from USAopoly was a great game. It kind of takes Risk and sets it in the Game of Thrones universe. That's a very, very fun game as well. I really enjoyed. Gold West from Tasty Minstrel Games. That was a fun and interesting game of, very light theme, but kind of a fun Euro-y Victory Point salad, kind of loosely based in the world of prospecting in the Old West. I enjoyed that. The Grizzled from Cool Mini or Not, a very, very cool World War I themed game in which players were trying to simply survive in the trenches as French soldiers. Very smart, very good game. And also, too, speaking of World War I, another great World War I themed game, Wings for the Baron from Victory Point Games, which is a game where you're all competing as manufacturers of German aircraft during the First World War. It's a very smart, very clever game. All right, without any further ado, let's talk about my top 10 games of 2015. Coming in at number 10, I mentioned a cousin of this just a moment ago. This is another Risk game, but this one is a bit different. This one is Risk Star Wars Edition from Hasbro. Now, this game, you're thinking, well, it's just another Risk commercial tie-in to a famous franchise. Well, it is. But it's also a very fun, very clever game. It's got the three different sections of the board shaped like a TIE fighter. In the center, you've got the space battle between the Rebels and the Empire trying to blow up the Death Star. On one side of the board, you've got the advance toward the shield generator, trying to take out the shield generator so that they can blow up the Death Star. And on the other side of the board, you have the iconic battle between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker. And what happens in one part of the board affects what happens in the others. It's a very clever, very fun game. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did, and I really, really enjoyed it. So that is Star Wars Risk from Hasbro. Number 9 is a game that, again, took me by surprise. I remember unboxing this game, thinking it didn't look like it would capture my imagination, and I ended up really, really enjoying it. This is Isle of Skye from Mayfair Games. This is a tile placement game. It plays kind of like Carcassonne, if you're familiar with Carcassonne, but it's better than Carcassonne because the ways you can score points kind of change not only from game to game, but from turn to turn. And it's very interesting, really a lot of fun. And also, too, because you're laying the tiles and building the roads and whatnot, there is kind of that little, feeling of like you're God building, your own little civilization there. And that's just fun. I'm, of course, being silly, but it's a very fun and interesting game that I really enjoyed quite a bit. Set in Scotland, so, it's extra kilty. Anyway, that is Isle of Skye from Mayfair Games, and that is my number 9. Well, number 8 is a game that is set in the Second World War. It's a war game, but it's more than a war game because it also deals with, you have kind of these diplomatic battles, particularly in the early game. Really a lot of fun. This is Triumph and Tragedy from GMT Games. It's a block war game. As I say, you do compete with these diplomatic battles early on in the game, but as the game progresses, you're going to end up declaring war. It's for 1 to 3 players. One of you is the Soviets, one of you is the Nazis, and one of you is kind of the Western Allies. And the war is going to play out completely ahistorical because the Western Allies can declare war on the Russians and vice versa. You don't necessarily have to go with Nazi Germany, go to war with Nazi Germany. And so it's a very interesting mechanic. If you like war games with a little something extra, a little sugar and spice in it, Triumph and Tragedy is a fantastic game. That is from GMT Games, and that is my number 8. My number 7 is a game that takes a mechanic from one of my favorite games of all time, Battlestar Galactica. Just takes that one mechanic and then builds an entire game around that one mechanic, and it succeeds brilliantly. I'm talking about Homeland, the game. Now, Homeland, the game, of course, from Gale Force 9, based on the TV series Homeland, starring Claire Danes. And I had never seen the TV series before I played the game. The game wanted me to start watching the TV series. Now, I'm caught up through season 4. And it's a pretty good TV show, and it's a pretty good game. The mechanic it takes from Battlestar Galactica is essentially the crisis mechanic, where everybody's putting in cards secretly and then revealing them to see what happens. Well, this is a game of terrorist threats, and the terrorist threats, you got multiple terrorist threats. They're moving up. Before they explode, you want to try to solve them. Or, well, I should say try to defuse them. But some of you are actual terrorists. One of you is an actual terrorist that wants the plots to succeed. Some of you are loyal agents of the CIA. You're trying to stop everything. Some of you are political opportunists, and you're going to get the higher score if some of the terrorist attacks go through, but others don't. So it's a very interesting game of hidden traitors and hidden loyalties, and as I say, it works very, very well. Even if you have not seen the TV show, I think you will really enjoy this game. Easy to learn, fairly easy to play, and, or rather, I should say, easy to play, fairly easy to learn. I really got a kick out of it. That is Homeland from Gale Force 9, my number 7. My number 6 is another entry into the Legendary family of games. This is Legendary Encounters, a Predator deck-building game. So this one's pretty cool. Now, on the surface, it plays a lot like the Alien game that came before it, but what's different here and what's new and what makes this its own game is the fact that not only do you have the cooperative game where you're working together as humans to defeat the predators, there is also a competitive version of the game where you're all predators hunting humans. And they are both very, very fun and intense game experiences. And I really enjoyed playing both of them quite a bit. I think I still like the Alien game a little bit better, and maybe that's just because I like the Alien franchise a little bit better, so it may be more theme. But mechanically, the Predator game may have the edge. So this is from Upper Deck. This is Legendary Encounters, a Predator deck building game, and that is my number 6. Number 5 is a game that in the back of my head I have wanted for a long, long, long time. And this is, of course, Forbidden Stars from Fantasy Flight Games. Forbidden Stars is kind of a strategic light war game set in the Warhammer 40k universe. Now, I remember years ago I was playing, kind of just lightly experimenting, playing with some of the miniatures of Warhammer 40k, and I thought it was interesting. But I remember talking to my friend who was collecting them, saying, gee, I wish they would make some kind of like an Axis and Allies version of Warhammer, some kind of strategic light war game that kind of played with minis, and I thought that would just be so much fun. I never thought it would happen, and it happened, and it's a brilliant game. You've got that forces conflict because the things you need to take are on other players' worlds, and so you need to take those worlds from them in order to gain your path to victory. So it's a game that forces conflict. You can't just sit and turtle all the time. You're moving constantly. The board is kind of shifting with these different storms, so you can't, you can be in the middle of a great assault and then it gets cut off. But it's just a brilliant game all around. Forbidden Stars is a lot of fun, a tremendous theme. Forbidden Stars from Fantasy Flight Games, that is my number 5. Number 4 is a game that I think is probably one of the most well-balanced games to play, in the sense that you constantly have to be aware of balance in this game, because it's 1 to 3 players. Ideally, you're going to be playing with 3 players, but you want to get ahead, you want to get the most points, but not too many points, because if you get too many points, you're going to lose, and the person in second place will win. It's balance. And that is Churchill from GMT Games. Churchill from GMT Games sees the players take on the roles of FDR, Churchill, and Stalin during World War II. And they're constantly meeting, and they are debating policies. They're debating issues. And you play cards, and it's almost like Twilight Struggle when you're playing the cards to, kind of affect the different things around the board. Here you're playing the cards which kind of affect how issues are going to move, and you play issues toward you or toward your enemies. And that's going to get you points, but then also you have this kind of war board, which how you played stuff in the conference sessions is going to determine how things move along in the war board. It's very interesting. It's very, very unique. I have never played a game that was like this at all. Like I said, there's some mechanics that are similar to Twilight Struggle, but just it's a very different game, and it's a very unique game, and it's a long game, and it's a complicated game, but it's so rich and such a great theme. And if you're like me and you love the history, it just makes it come alive, like few other games I've ever seen have been able to do. So I love Churchill. I think it is an outstanding game, and you need to check it out. So that is Churchill from GMT Games. That is my number 4. My number 3 is another one of those games that it kind of took me by surprise, but in a different way, because it looks amazing. The look of this game is absolutely brilliant. I was thinking there's no way this can be a great game when it looks so good. And it does. This is a game that not only looks amazing, it has some of the most amazing minis you will ever see in a board game, but it also plays like a dream. It only plays about 90 minutes. Again, you're thinking it's going to be a 4-hour game. It plays in 90 minutes tops. And it's a great light war game. This is Cthulhu Wars from Sandy Petersen Games or Green Egg Games. It is absolutely brilliant. It's essentially, you play games like Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, where you're trying to essentially prevent Cthulhu from returning to Earth and wreaking havoc. This game assumes that already happened. Cthulhu's here, same with all these other Elder Gods, and now they're not too happy with each other, and they're fighting each other. And so you take on the role of one of these Elder Gods and their minions or what have you, and you're fighting, and you're rolling dice at standard combat, but it's not just fighting for territory, you're fighting to achieve certain objectives in a spell book. You have 6 different spells. Once you complete all of those, you can then make a move to win the game. You can try to get the most points to win the game, but you cannot win the game unless you complete your spell book. So again, it's a game that forces conflict. You cannot turtle. If you want to win, you got to go out there, you got to beat up some of your neighbors, and it is just a fantastically fun game. Looks brilliant, plays brilliant. I love Cthulhu Wars from Sandy Petersen Games. That's why it is my number 3. I gotta tell you, my number 2 and my number 3, I kind of debated back and forth. And you could almost say this game and Cthulhu Wars are more almost tied, but I decided ultimately I'd go a 3 and a 2. And this game I like a lot. And it was a controversial game when it came out, a very controversial game. It remains quite controversial because it is, of course, a game that involves not only a board and dice and cards, but an app. I am, of course, talking about Fantasy Flight Games' XCOM, the board game. Now, a lot of the haters out there, I find, never played this game because once you play the game, you realize the app is kind of no different than drawing cards. It's just a way to give you information and to time the game. Really, fundamentally, this is very, 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 very much a standard board game. It's a game in which you have a lot of negotiation, you have a lot of dice rolling. All of the things I love about a great cooperative game are here, and then the app just kind of adds another layer of theme and fun to the game. I love negotiation in games, and this is a great negotiation game. It's a great negotiation game because you've got to decide, well, do we want to spend more on research, or should we really worry about knocking some of those UFOs, out of orbit or out of over North America or Africa? Do we allocate resources so that we can battle some of the monsters that are invading our base? How are we best going to use what limited resources we have? And there's a constant negotiation there. There's a constant negotiation. And the pressure is on. The pressure is on to get things done now when the app is going. But then when the app isn't going and you're all just sitting there trying to work things out, there's a pressure. Okay, we got this done, we got this done, we got this done. Then you turn to the commander, are we under budget? Because if we're not under budget, bad things are going to happen. So it's a fun game. It is a tremendously fun game. Fantasy Flight Games did a great job, and I really love XCOM, the board game. So that's why it is my number 2. Finally, my number 1 game of 2015. Now, I gotta tell you, pretty much all the games I've mentioned are contenders for number 1. Within the top 10, I think. They all made a very strong case, particularly XCOM and Cthulhu Wars, and even Churchill. I think any one of these easily could have been my number 1. But I chose my number 1 for a couple of reasons. Number 1, I love the theme. I think the theme is phenomenal. It's a licensed game. It's an IP game, and so I love the IP. I love the franchise. But also, too, I love the ease of play with this game combined with the deep strategy that this game can offer. And this is a game that I was hoping would be a little bit bigger than it is, and it's big, but I was kind of hoping it would be even bigger. But that being said, my favorite game of 2015 is from Fantasy Flight Games, Star Wars Armada. Now, Star Wars Armada kind of picks up where Star Wars X-Wing left off. Now, Star Wars X-Wing Miniatures is a fantastic game from Fantasy Flight Games about dogfighting starfighters. And you can get some bigger ships, and they can throw them into the mix, and that's cool. Star Wars Armada really ups the ante. It's not the same game as Star Wars X-Wing at all. It's a very different game. It's a deeper game. It's a richer game. In Star Wars X-Wing, if you're being shot at, you roll the dice to see if you can evade. And if you roll an evade token, yeah, I evaded. In Star Wars Armada, you got these big lumbering ships. Odds are you're going to get hit. But you have options. What am I going to do? Am I going to redirect some of the shields? Am I going to brace to try to have the number of hits I'm going to take? You have some real options, depending on what your ship is, when you take hits. I love that. I love the fact that movement in this game isn't hidden. You can even measure your movement, unlike in X-Wing. But you got to be careful because you got a certain speed, and you have to adjust the speed. If you adjust the speed, you can't do other things. You want to concentrate fire to roll more dice. You want to activate kind of your fighter escorts out of sequence, or maybe you want to repair your ship, and you have to plan for those 2 or 3 turns ahead, depending on what your ship is. It is so good. It's like a chess game, but with these cool models. Of course, the fun Star Wars theme. Lots of cards and lots of upgrades you can add to the ship. You can customize it. So no 2 games are going to be exactly the same. I really, really, really like this. I like how the fighters move and engage with each other. Oh, it's a work of art. It really is. And that's, some of these games, that's what we got to start thinking of them as, is works of art. This is a work of art. Really, really enjoyed it. I just played a game the other night with Zach, and we had just so much fun, the two of us, duking it out as the Rebels and the Imperials. It's just a great game, great theme, great fun. Star Wars Armada, my number 1 game of 2015 from Fantasy Flight Games. And that is it. That is my top 10 games from 2015. I'm very eager to hear what you have to say, so leave a comment here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you also to like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Discriminating Gamer. And I got to tell you right now, if you have not played any of these games, go out and play them right now. Why are you still watching this video? Go play them now. Go. You go.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
Because if you don't got a game, you don't got anything. Right, Mommy? Oh, you don't got one? Your face, Mommy! What about you, Wolfman? You don't got one, do you? Ah! You suck! No, I suck. I seriously beat you with the sucking. We probably should cut that part.